So imagine you're on this really long road trip, right? And the car radio is just totally stuck on a station that only plays, like, anxiety-inducing news.
Oh, the absolute worst.
Yeah, and harsh criticism of literally everything you do. Plus, highly specific, super embarrassing memories from, like, 10 years ago.
Right, and the volume knob is completely broken. It's just blaring nonstop for hundreds of miles.
Exactly. And the wildest part is, for most of our lives, we just sit there in the driver's seat and, well, we assume that we actually are the radio station.
We completely identify with the noise.
We really do.
Yeah.
But what if you could just, step out of the car? That's what we're getting into today. Welcome to today's deep dive. We are looking at how to stop struggling, how to detach from your ego, and basically how to bring true lightness into your daily life.
And we've got a really massive stack of sources for this one.
I really do.
We're looking at modern psychological frameworks like acceptance and commitment therapy.
Right, ACT.
Yeah, ACT, plus teachings from spiritual figures like Eckhart Tolle and Michael Singer, some really deep cuts from classical Indian philosophies, and even Christian perspectives on neuroscience.
It's a huge mix. And despite coming from these wildly different eras and, completely different worldviews, they all point to this one startling, almost uncomfortable conclusion.
Which is that the voice inside your head is not actually you.
The huge thing to wrap your head around. But to stop struggling, we first have to identify what is actually manufacturing the struggle.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Singer and Tolle make this really compelling case that this constant mental chatter, that broken radio station we were just talking about, is essentially a collection of stored emotional preferences.
Like unresolved past experiences stuff?
Yeah, and a collective thought forms. It's basically a giant recycling bin of everything you've ever absorbed in your life.
They're constantly churning.
Right, mechanically reacting to the present moment based on really old, outdated conditioning.
Okay, that reminds me of that old Buddha parable of the poisoned arrow. Have you heard this one?
Oh, the one about getting shot.
Yeah, so if you get shot with an arrow, you don't lie there demanding to know, like, who shot it or what kind of wood the shaft is made of or what bird the feathers came from.
Well, you'd bleed out. You just pull the arrow out.
Exactly. But psychologically, we don't do that. When we feel a flash of pain or annoyance, we twist the arrow.
We just dig it in deeper.
We do. We demand to know why this is happening to us, who is to blame, and what it means for our entire future. We create this massive narrative around what was just a temporary sting.
Because the arrow itself is just momentary pain. The twisting of the arrow, that's our self-generated mental suffering.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the mind just spins into overdrive, right? It tries to solve an emotional experience as if it were a math problem.
That's a great way to put it.
I was thinking of it like living with a roommate who constantly narrates your life with the worst possible interpretations.
Oh, man. The toxic roommate.
Totally. Like, you walk into work, your boss looks at you funny, and the roommate whispers, "Oh, you're definitely getting fired today."
Just jumping straight to the worst case scenario.
Always. But here's my question for you. If that voice isn't me, why is it so incredibly convincing?
Well,
Because I think it's because the roommate speaks in my own voice. It uses I. It says, "I am going to get fired." So naturally, I feel completely attached to the panic.
what's fascinating here is that the mechanism of identification is just so subtle. The mind is a brilliant evolutionary tool designed for solving practical external problems.
Right. Assessing threats is literally what kept our ancestors alive.
Exactly, but because that threat assessment tool is so loud and honestly so constant, we accidentally over-identify with it.
We mistake the survival tool for our core identity.
We do. And when you think you are the voice, you automatically defend its positions. You actually believe its manufactured fears are your actual existential fears.
So the natural instinct is to fight back. Like, if the roommate is being terrible, you want to scream at them to shut up.
Right. You want to forcefully suppress the anxious thoughts.
Yeah, and just replace them with, positive affirmations or something. But based on our sources, that's entirely the wrong approach.
Oh, 100%. Suppressing the voice only guarantees deeper suffering. Trying to force your mind to be quiet is like trying to push a beach ball underwater.
Oh, I like that visual.
Yeah, you might hold it down for a minute, but it takes a ton of exhausting effort.
And eventually your arms get tired.
Right. And it explodes back to the surface, usually hitting you right in the face.
Always in the face.
Yeah.
So true spiritual and psychological growth comes from relaxing through the inner resistance.
Exactly. You don't fight the roommate. You don't debate the roommate. You just stop taking their commentary so seriously.
Okay, so if that loud, anxious voice isn't us, then we have to figure out what exactly we're listening to. Our sources draw a really sharp line here between the ego, the roommate, and our deeper awareness.
Which some of the texts call the higher self or intuition.
Right. And the ego, well, it's defined by scarcity, isn't it?
Completely. It's loud, it's fearful, and it's incredibly defensive. It fluctuates wildly based on your external circumstances.
Like if someone gives you a compliment, the ego inflates and feels super superior.
But if someone criticizes you, it just crashes and feels worthless. It constantly needs that external validation to even prove it exists.
And it absolutely loves a good pros and cons list.
Oh, yeah. The ego is always justifying its decisions with long, exhausting lists of reasons.
Because it's highly analytical, right? It's frantically trying to predict and control this completely unpredictable future just to keep you safe.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you contrast that frantic energy with the higher self, or intuition. The sources describe this presence as quiet, loving, and entirely steady.
It operates from a place of absolute abundance.
Right. It doesn't fluctuate based on whether you had a good day or a bad day at work. It's just there.
I've actually noticed that intuition rarely needs to justify itself. Like when intuition speaks, it doesn't give you a massive spreadsheet of reasons.
No, it usually just provides one simple, clear answer.
Yeah. Like leave this job or call this friend. And when you make a decision from that place, your head and your heart just feel at peace.
Even if the decision makes zero logical sense to the people around you.
Right. But, okay, I do want to push back on the framing here just a little bit.
Yeah.
We're painting the ego as this super villainous roommate.
Yeah, we are a bit.
But from an evolutionary standpoint, the ego's main job is to protect us, mentally and physically. Like, if a car is swerving into my lane on the highway, my ego-driven fear is what makes me jerk the steering wheel and stay alive.
That's true.
So we shouldn't necessarily be waging a war on the ego, right?
Oh, definitely not. In fact, hating the ego is literally just the ego hating itself.
Oh, wow. That's a trap.
It's a huge trap. Recognizing the ego isn't about destroying it. It's about automatically taking its power away just through observation.
Just by seeing it.
Exactly. You can appreciate the ego for trying to keep you safe. You can literally say, thank you for pointing out that swerving car, or thank you for trying to protect me from looking foolish in this meeting.
But then you just firmly put it in the passenger seat.
Right. You don't let it drive. George Lizos, who's one of the authors in our stack, has a perfect litmus test for this. He writes, the ego doubts and the divine self knows.
The ego doubts and the divine self knows. I love that.
It's so clear. If you are spinning in doubt, constantly justifying and arguing with yourself, you are in ego territory.
But if there's just a quiet, steady knowing, that's intuition.
Exactly.
But wondering where that quiet, steady knowing actually comes from takes us into some fascinating territory. Because here's where it gets really interesting.
Oh, the ancient frameworks.
Yeah. This struggle between the mind's noise and our true awareness isn't some, modern self-help invention.
Not at all.
When you dig into the world's oldest traditions, you find this recurring, almost obsessive search for what classical Indian philosophies call the luminous self.
Right. These ancient frameworks were trying to answer the exact question we're wrestling with today.
Right.
What is that quiet awareness?
Well, how do they explain it?
Well, if you look at a system like Advaita Vedanta, which is a philosophy of absolute non-dualism.
Non-dualism meaning, like, everything is one.
Exactly. They argued thousands of years ago that reality is just one indivisible, self-luminous consciousness.
So where does the mind fit in?
They actually believed the mind and the body are inert. They aren't conscious on their own. The mind only appears conscious because it reflects the light of this one universal awareness.
Kind of the way the moon only shines because it reflects the sun.
That is the exact perfect analogy, yeah.
Okay, so that's Advaita Vedanta. But then you look at something like Samkhya Yoga, which takes a slightly different angle, right?
Yeah, Samkhya is dualistic. So instead of one universal consciousness, they argued there are many individual pure consciousnesses.
And they act as, what, passive witnesses to the physical world?
Exactly, including the physical brain. And they have this absolutely brilliant analogy of the crystal and the red flower.
Oh, I remember this from the notes. Remind me how this one goes.
So if you place a completely clear crystal right next to a vibrant red flower, the crystal looks red.
It takes on the glow of the flower.
Right. But the crystal itself hasn't changed its nature. It's just reflecting what's near it. In this framework, your pure awareness is the crystal, and your swirling, anxious thoughts are the red flower.
Oh, man. So we suffer because we think we are the anxiety.
Exactly, when in reality, we are just the clear awareness witnessing the anxiety.
That is so powerful. And they take that even further with another analogy, right? The lame man with sight and the blind man with legs.
Yes. Imagine two men lost in a forest. The lame man represents pure consciousness. He can see everything perfectly, but he can't act or move.
Okay. And the blind man.
The blind man represents matter and the active thinking mind. He can move, he can build, he can solve problems, but he can't actually see.
So they have to team up.
Right. To survive, the lame man gets on the shoulders of the blind man. They work together. The suffering only begins when the writer forgets he is the writer and starts believing he actually is the blind man.
That is a brilliant illustration of over-identification.
Wow, it really is.
And to push the boundaries of this even further, you bring in the Buddhist perspective. Because Buddhism basically strips away the idea of an eternal soul entirely, doesn't it?
They do. They argue for no self. The idea that a person is just a stream of consciousness, a collection of constantly changing physical and mental processes.
Like a river. It looks like a solid thing from a distance, but up close, it's never the same water twice.
Exactly. Yet, even in a system that rejects a permanent soul, Buddhism still teaches that underneath all the mental noise and defilements, there is a fundamental clarity.
A luminous mind.
Right, a luminous mind.
Okay, so to round out this exploration, our sources also include modern Christian perspectives from thinkers like the neuroscientist Sharon Dirks.
Yeah, she brings a really interesting view to this.
She pushes back hard against the strict materialist view that says, you are just your brain. The idea that your thoughts, your love, your anxiety are nothing but neurons firing in a meat computer.
Right. She argues that the very fact we can observe our thoughts implies a separation.
From her perspective, we have a mind, and we can step back and witness our thoughts, specifically because we are created by conscious God.
So we have a mind because God has a mind?
Exactly. But if I'm listening to this right now, I might be thinking, okay, I've got a Buddhist worldview saying there's no soul, but they're a luminous mind, a Hindu worldview saying we all share one giant universal mind, and a Christian neuroscientist saying my mind is a reflection of a creator God.
It's a lot of different metaphysics.
It is. How do these wildly different, conflicting metaphysical beliefs help me stop struggling?
Well, I think the beauty here is that the metaphysical disagreement doesn't actually matter for our daily lives.
Really? How so?
Because phenomenologically, meaning in terms of your actual lived daily human experience, they completely agree.
They all conclude that you are the witness, not the physical chatter of the brain.
Every single one of these traditions says, you are not the radio station. Whether that awareness is a fragment of the divine, a universal light, or an empty, luminous stream, the practical instruction is identical. Step back and watch the mind.
Okay, but if all these traditions agree that we need to step back from the mind, the really obvious question is, how on earth do you actually do that?
Yeah, that's the tricky part.
Especially when you're running late, you're stuck in traffic, and your phone is just blowing up with stressful emails.
The philosophy is great, but the application is where the rubber meets the road.
Exactly. And that's where acceptance and commitment therapy, or ACT, comes into our source stack. Because ACT basically operationalizes this ancient wisdom for modern psychology.
It really does. ACT relies on two core processes to deal with the overwhelming mind: diffusion and expansion.
Let's start with diffusion. That's exactly what it sounds like, right? Diffusing or unsticking yourself from your thoughts.
Yes. The framework suggests treating your thoughts like cars driving past your house.
Okay, picture that.
Imagine you're sitting quietly on your front porch. A car drives by with a giant banner that says, "You are a complete failure."
Yikes.
Diffusion means you just watch the car drive by. You note it, you say, oh, there goes the failure thought.
But what we normally do is we run out into the street.
We chase the car.
Yes.
Yes.
We chase it, we grab onto the bumper,
Right.
and we just let it drag us for 3 miles down the road while we argue with the driver.
Which is so exhausting.
It really is. And then there's expansion, which is kind of the emotional counterpart to that, right?
Exactly.
Right.
Because when that failure thought hits, it usually brings a physical feeling of anxiety.
A tight chest or a sinking stomach.
Right. And instead of tensing up and struggling against that feeling, you expand around it. You literally visualize making extra room in your body for the sensation.
You just drop the struggle.
Drop the struggle. By giving the emotion breathing space, it can process and pass through you without drowning you.
And this mirrors the exact teachings of spiritual figures like Ramana Maharshi and Eckhart Tolle.
Totally. Maharshi taught a practice of relentless self-inquiry, constantly asking the internal question, who am I?
But the point isn't to logically find a verbal answer, is it?
No, not at all. The point of the question is to force your attention away from the swirling thoughts and turn it back onto the awareness that is doing the observing.
Which Tolle simply calls watching the thinker, without judgment.
Right, just watching.
But we have to clarify a massive misunderstanding here, because I feel like this is where so many people just give up on mindfulness.
Oh, about stopping the thoughts.
Yes. The goal is not to stop thinking. If you sit down to meditate and try to force your brain to be quiet, you will just get so frustrated.
Because thinking isn't inherently bad. The mind is an incredible tool for, planning a vacation, analyzing data, or solving complex problems.
The problem is believing that every random, conditioned thought your mind produces is the absolute truth about reality.
Right. It's like sitting on the bank of a river, watching leaves float by on the surface. Each leaf is a thought. The problem isn't that the river is flowing. The river is supposed to flow.
Exactly. The problem is when we jump into the rapids, grab onto a leaf, and try to fight the current.
Yes. By choosing to stay on the riverbank, you are building a psychological muscle that ACT calls psychological flexibility.
And when you recognize the observing self, that quiet part of you that is simply aware you are having a thought, you instantly create a tiny fraction of space between a stimulus and your reaction.
And in that tiny space lies your entire freedom. It's the freedom to choose how you want to respond to the world rather than just reacting on mechanical autopilot.
That's the ultimate payoff, isn't it? Doing all this heavy lifting isn't to become some detached, emotionless robot floating through life.
No, not at all.
The whole point of stepping back from the ego, watching the thinker, and building that psychological flexibility is to actively bring joy, ease, and lightness into the present moment.
Which is really what we all want. Tolle offers a brilliant criterion to actually test your state of consciousness at any given moment.
Oh, the question.
Yeah, you just stop and ask yourself, is there joy, ease, and lightness in what I am doing right now?
It's such a simple question. But if the answer is no, if whatever you're doing feels like a heavy burden or a grinding struggle, it means psychological time and the ego are basically covering up the present moment.
But the revolutionary part of this is that you don't necessarily have to change what you are doing.
Right.
You just have to change how you are doing it. It's about shifting your full attention to the doing itself rather than obsessing over the result you want to achieve.
Give me an example of that.
Okay, so if you are washing the dishes and you are entirely focused on the warm water, the movement of your hands, the physical reality of the moment, there is a lightness to it.
The burden only appears when you are washing the dishes while mentally arguing with your spouse about something they said yesterday.
Or while frantically wishing you were already sitting on the couch.
Yes. That frantic wishing is what Tolle calls the waiting mindset.
Oh, the waiting mindset is everywhere.
It is. He splits this into small-scale waiting, like, vibrating with impatience while stuck behind a slow person at the grocery store.
Which we all do.
We all do it. But then there's large-scale waiting, which is much more insidious. Large-scale waiting is constantly feeling like your real life hasn't started yet.
Right, you're waiting for your next vacation, waiting for a promotion, waiting to meet the right partner.
Or ironically, even waiting to achieve spiritual enlightenment so you can finally be happy.
It's endless, because waiting is, at its core, a complete rejection of the present moment.
It means you want the future, and you resent what is happening right now.
And that creates massive inner conflict. You are fundamentally at war with reality.
And when you are at war with reality, you activate what our sources call the pain body.
The pain body. That's a huge concept.
It really is. It's basically the accumulation of negativity, old emotional pain, and reactivity. When something annoying happens, the pain body just loves to feed on it.
Right. Tolle uses the example of a car alarm going off across the street.
Oh, this is a great one. Normally, that sound hits us, and we instantly put up this solid wall of internal resistance. We're like, it shouldn't be happening. Who leaves their alarm on? This is ruining my morning.
And that solid wall of resistance gets painfully battered by the noise.
So his solution is to practice what he calls transparency. You imagine yourself becoming physically transparent, like a ghost.
Instead of hitting a solid wall, you let the sound of the alarm pass right through you.
The mechanics of how this actually works are so fascinating. It really comes down to a somatic feedback loop.
Somatic meaning in the body.
Right. When your mind says, I hate this noise, your body responds by physically tensing up. Your shoulders rise, your jaw clenches.
And then that physical tension sends a distress signal back to the brain saying, hey, we are under attack.
Which causes the mind to scream even louder. It's a vicious cycle.
It is. So practicing transparency means intentionally dropping the physical tension.
When you soften your body and let the annoyance pass through you, you break the neurological feedback loop.
Without the physical tension, the mental pain body loses its fuel.
Okay, so if someone is listening to this right now, trying to figure out how to practically apply this to their life, it really all comes down to the wisdom of surrender.
But we have to be very careful with that word.
Yes, absolutely. Because surrender does not mean weakness.
Not at all.
It doesn't mean passively giving up, being a doormat, or, letting people abuse you. Surrender simply means yielding to the flow of life without inner resistance. You accept the isness of the present moment unconditionally.
Right. If you are deeply unhappy in a situation, pay close attention to your physical body. Your body will always reflect your inner state as a physical sensation.
Like that tight chest or sinking stomach or shallow breathing.
Exactly. That physical sensation is your intuition giving you a vital clue that your mind is resisting reality. The practice is to drop the internal resistance first.
Except that the traffic jam is happening.
Except that the difficult conversation must take place.
And once you drop the internal war, then you can take clear, positive action to change your situation.
But you're acting from a place of clarity rather than a place of frantic, ego-driven panic.
Wow. We've covered an immense amount of ground today. If we pull all these threads together, from the ACT therapists to Eckhart Tolle to ancient monks sitting in the Himalayas, the core takeaway is really that the loud, judgmental, anxious voice in your head is not you.
It's an accumulation of past experiences, conditioned thoughts, and a threat detection system just stuck in overdrive.
But by recognizing your observing self, that quiet, luminous awareness that watches the thoughts, you can step back.
You can let the painful thoughts drive by like cars on a street.
You can drop the exhausting cycle of constantly waiting for your real life to begin. So I want to encourage you to take a moment today, wherever you are, and ask yourself that simple question. Is there joy, ease, and lightness in what I'm doing right now?